I want my question. It's a little bit hard to articulate for me, so please just bear for like a minute. I wanted to ask you about the recent politically polarizing tendencies of the media and a way out. So I identify two problems in particular. It seems the American news media has evolved to I guess, promote sensationalism and intolerance toward other political views. I feel that this leads to a dangerous tendency for people to just choose their own media outlets in order to confirm their own biases. And I hope you agree that this occurs with respect to all political affiliations. A little bit closer, maybe. Thanks. The other problem deals with fake news. Obviously, a term that's become like super nebulous. It's thrown around a great deal. But specifically with fake news, there are a lot of news websites of dubious quality, and we hear stories how other countries or companies have used Facebook advertisements, for example, to promote to promote certain websites and sway easily impressionable opinions. So it's clear that Americans need, I guess everybody needs a basic access of reliable information. We need to have a reliable news media that informs the public. But it seems by default, Americans will seek out information that they find palatable. But this leads to me to believe that it should be the burden of the news media to be reliable and not, I guess, vitriolic. So like in the past, we've had something I think was called the Fairness Doctrine that was repealed like a few decades ago that required outlets to present like, certain views. But obviously government regulation towards media and information, that's a slippery slope. What's the way out? What do you think the way out is?
I think the way out is a more informed population, unfortunately, right? I think that the idea that the government should never be regulating speech or access to it. And once the government does that, then you're wandering into very dicey, quasi-fascistic territory. When it comes to consumers of media, look, the media are just going to provide you what you want to read. Okay, the media are going to provide you what you want to click on. And yes, I would say this, I think most of the people in the media, yes, even including the left-leaning media, do want to tell the truth. I think a lot of them don't recognize their own biases. You know, look, I'm conservative. That means the way that I cover the news is going to be from a conservative angle. I try to separate myself enough to say, okay, here's the fact and then here's my opinion. But everything that I say is coming from that point of view. I think one of the big problems in media is people don't do that, right? Like George Stephanopoulos tries to pretend he's an objective news source. Right? That doesn't mean everything he says is false, but it does mean that everything he says is coming from the former campaign spokesperson for Bill Clinton. And that should have an impact. So that means it's up to us to look at a variety of news sources. I recommend this all the time, right? Don't just listen to my podcast, go listen to Pod Save America. Don't just read Daily Wire, go over and check out Huffington Post. Make sure that you're reading a variety of news sources. If you actually want to tell what the facts are, the best way to do it is to read two opposing websites or two opposing outlets, and think of them as lines that intersect at one point, and the point at which they intersect is the factual point. And whatever those two stories have in common, you can take that as probably the grain of truth in the story.
Am I allowed a brief follow-up? Yeah. Okay. So I guess I understand your emphasis on self-reliance, but evidently, to the extent that you believe that one believes in the efficiency of free markets, evidently people tend to move to confirm their own biases, and that's not occurring.
Well, I mean, I think that's why, the founders relied on the idea that we were going to have a civically educated public. I mean, in the end, you're going to have to trust the people one way or another. I don't trust the government to regulate what the people see. I trust the government less to regulate what the people see than I do the people to educate themselves. And this one falls under the heading of, as Winston Churchill said, democracy is the worst system except for all the others. Right? Unfortunately, there's no way out of this box. People are going to have to inform themselves better. And yes, of course, people have a tendency toward confirmation bias. But that's why it's your job, if you know about confirmation bias, to suggest to people that maybe they should stop relying so much on their own confirmation bias.